Well-being is a word that sounds simple at first, yet the science behind it reaches into nearly every system of the human body. When researchers study well-being, they are not usually looking for a single feeling or a single measurement. Instead, they examine a broad picture that includes physical health, mental function, emotional balance, social connection, sleep quality, and even the way people experience everyday life. What makes this especially interesting is that well-being is not something stored in one location inside the brain or body. It emerges from countless interactions taking place every second. Tiny electrical signals travel through networks of neurons, hormones move through the bloodstream, cells communicate using chemical messages. The immune system quietly monitors the environment inside the body. Meanwhile, the brain continuously gathers information from the senses and compares it with memories, expectations, and past experiences. Together, these processes create the experience of being alive. Scientists sometimes describe well-being as a dynamic state rather than a fixed condition. It shifts slightly from moment to moment, influenced by sleep, nutrition, movement, relationships, and even the amount of daylight reaching the eyes. The remarkable thing is that the body is constantly working to maintain balance, even when a person is not consciously thinking about health or happiness. Countless biological systems are quietly adjusting themselves, seeking stability in a changing world. One of the most important ideas in well-being science is a concept known as homeostasis. This word refers to the body's ability to maintain stable internal conditions despite changes occurring outside. The temperature of a room may rise or fall, yet the body works hard to keep its internal temperature within a narrow range. Water levels fluctuate throughout the day, but complex systems help regulate hydration. Blood sugar rises after meals and gradually returns toward normal levels through carefully coordinated biological processes. Homeostasis operates continuously and usually without conscious awareness. It is one of the reasons humans can function in many different environments. Scientists often view well-being through the lens of this balance. When the body's systems are able to adapt efficiently to challenges, people generally feel better physically and mentally. When those systems are pushed beyond their limits for long periods, discomfort and fatigue can begin to appear. This does not mean that well-being requires perfect stability at all times. In fact, life naturally involves change. What matters is the body's ability to respond and recover. Researchers have discovered that many aspects of health depend less on avoiding every challenge and more on maintaining the flexibility needed to adjust to them. In this sense, well-being can be thought of as an ongoing conversation between the body and its environment, a quiet process of adaptation that never truly stops. The brain plays a central role in this conversation. Although it represents only a small percentage of total body weight, it consumes a surprisingly large share of the body's energy. Throughout the day and night, billions of neurons exchange information through intricate networks. Some regions process sensory information, while others support memory, attention, planning, or emotional regulation. Modern brain imaging has revealed that even during periods of rest, the brain remains highly active. Rather than shutting down, it continues organizing information, maintaining internal models of the world, and preparing for future actions. Researchers studying well-being have found that healthy brain function depends on many interconnected factors. Sleep supports memory consolidation and cellular maintenance. Physical activity increases blood flow and can encourage the growth of new neural connections. Social interaction stimulates networks associated with communication and understanding. Even simple exposure to natural environments appears to influence patterns of brain activity. What emerges from this research is a picture of remarkable complexity. Well-being is not produced by a single brain chemical or a single mental state. Instead, it arises from the coordinated activity of many systems working together. Like an orchestra composed of thousands of instruments, the brain contributes to well-being through balance, timing, and cooperation, rather than through any single component acting alone. Another fascinating aspect of well-being involves the relationship between the brain and the body. For many years, people often discussed physical health and mental health as if they existed separately. Modern science paints a different picture. Communication between the brain and body is constant and multidirectional. Hormones released by glands can influence mood and attention. Signals from the digestive system travel to the brain through nerves and chemical pathways. The immune system communicates with neural networks in ways researchers are still working to understand. This interconnectedness means that experiences occurring in one part of the body can influence many others. A restful night of sleep can improve concentration, emotional stability, and physical recovery. Chronic sleep loss, on the other hand, can affect everything from reaction time to immune function. The same principle appears throughout well-being research. Systems that seem unrelated often turn out to be deeply connected. Scientists increasingly describe the body as an integrated network rather than a collection of isolated parts. Understanding this interconnected design helps explain why small habits sometimes have effects that extend far beyond their immediate purpose. A short walk, a nutritious meal, or a consistent sleep schedule may appear simple on the surface, yet each interacts with numerous biological processes simultaneously, creating patterns that gradually influence overall well-being. Among the many influences on well-being, sleep occupies a particularly important place. During sleep, the brain enters a series of carefully organized stages that support restoration and maintenance. Memories are processed and reorganized, certain waste products are cleared more efficiently from brain tissue. Hormonal activity follows patterns that help regulate growth, repair, and energy balance. Scientists continue to discover new details about these nighttime processes, but one conclusion remains remarkably consistent. Sleep is not merely a period of inactivity. It is an active biological state essential for healthy function. Interestingly, well-being and sleep influence one another in both directions. Good sleep often supports emotional balance, cognitive performance, and physical health. At the same time, positive well-being habits can contribute to better sleep quality. This creates a gentle cycle in which different aspects of health reinforce each other. From an evolutionary perspective, sleep may appear mysterious because it temporarily reduces awareness of the environment. Yet the fact that sleep evolved across so many species suggests that its benefits are profound. Every night, countless biological systems shift into patterns that have been refined through millions of years of evolution, quietly supporting the body's ability to function during the following day. As researchers continue exploring well-being, one of the most intriguing discoveries is that the human body is not striving for perfection. Instead, it appears designed for adaptation, resilience, and continuous adjustment. Well-being emerges not from eliminating every challenge, but from maintaining the capacity to respond effectively as circumstances change. In the quiet activity of cells, the rhythmic flow of blood, the communication of neurons, and the restorative cycles of sleep, there exists a remarkable example of biological coordination. Every moment, whether noticed or unnoticed, the body participates in countless processes that support life. Understanding these processes does not require urgency or excitement. Their significance often becomes clearer when viewed slowly, as part of a larger pattern. The science of well-being invites us to see the human body not as a machine pursuing a final destination, but as a living system constantly adapting, learning, and maintaining balance in a changing world. And as the night grows quieter, it is worth considering that even now, beneath conscious awareness, that intricate work continues without pause, carrying on through every heartbeat, every breath, and every passing moment. That continuous activity becomes even more interesting when scientists examine how the body responds to the passage of time. Deep within the brain is a tiny region known as the suprachiasmatic nucleus, often described as one of the body's primary biological clocks. Although it contains only a relatively small number of cells, it helps coordinate daily rhythms throughout the body. These rhythms influence sleep and wakefulness, hormone production, body temperature, alertness, and many other processes. Long before humans invented clocks, calendars, or electric lighting, living organisms evolved under predictable cycles of daylight and darkness. As a result, many biological systems learned to anticipate changes rather than simply react to them. Researchers have found that well-being is closely linked to these internal rhythms. The body tends to perform certain functions more efficiently at particular times of day. Hormone levels naturally rise and fall according to daily patterns. Energy availability shifts gradually over 24 hours. Even the activity of certain genes follows rhythmic cycles. What makes this especially remarkable is that countless cells throughout the body appear to keep time in their own way while remaining coordinated with larger biological rhythms. The result is a vast internal schedule operating continuously beneath conscious awareness. Most people rarely notice these processes directly, yet they influence how the body functions from morning until night, and from one season to the next. The influence of sunlight on well-being provides another fascinating example of the body's relationship with its environment. Light entering the eyes does much more than create visual images. Specialized cells in the retina detect changes in brightness and communicate this information to regions of the brain involved in regulating biological rhythms. Morning light is particularly important because it helps synchronize internal clocks with the external world. Scientists sometimes describe this process as biological timekeeping. By receiving reliable information about day and night, the body can organize countless physiological activities more effectively. This relationship between light and well-being highlights an important principle in biology. Human beings are not separate from their environment. Instead, they are deeply connected to it through continuous streams of information. Temperature, sound, social interaction, food availability, and light all provide signals that influence biological processes. Throughout evolutionary history, organisms that successfully interpreted these signals gained advantages in survival and reproduction. Today, those ancient adaptive systems remain active. Even in modern environments filled with technology, the brain and body continue responding to patterns of light and darkness that have shaped life on Earth for millions of years. Another important component of well-being involves movement. Human bodies evolved in environments where regular physical activity was a normal part of daily life. Walking, carrying objects, climbing, gathering food, and exploring surroundings all required energy expenditure. Modern exercise science has revealed that movement affects far more than muscles and bones. During physical activity, the body undergoes a wide range of physiological changes. Blood circulation increases, oxygen delivery becomes more efficient, various signaling molecules are released into the bloodstream. Some of these molecules influence brain function and may support learning, memory, and emotional regulation. Researchers continue investigating exactly how these mechanisms operate, but the overall picture is clear. Movement creates biological activity that reaches many systems simultaneously. Interestingly, the benefits are not limited to intense exercise. Even moderate movement appears capable of influencing health in meaningful ways. This suggests that the human body is designed not for constant exertion, but for regular engagement with physical activity across the day. From a well-being perspective, movement represents another example of how interconnected biological systems are. What begins as muscle activity can influence circulation, metabolism, brain function, and overall physiological balance. The relationship between well-being and social connection offers yet another area of scientific interest. Humans are among the most social species on Earth. Throughout evolutionary history, cooperation often improved survival. Working together made it easier to find food, share information, care for offspring, and respond to threats. As a result, the human brain developed sophisticated systems for understanding and interacting with others. Modern neuroscience has identified networks involved in recognizing emotions, interpreting facial expressions, predicting behavior, and maintaining social bonds. These abilities are so deeply embedded that social experiences can influence biological processes throughout the body. Researchers have observed connections between social relationships and various measures of health. While the exact mechanisms remain complex, it appears that human well-being is shaped not only by individual biology, but also by patterns of interaction with others. Even brief moments of positive social connection can activate neural systems associated with trust, cooperation, and belonging. This does not mean that well-being depends on constant social activity. People differ greatly in their preferences and personalities. Rather, the science suggests that human beings possess biological systems that evolved within social environments and continue to respond to them today. One of the quieter discoveries in well-being research concerns the role of attention. At any given moment, the brain receives far more information than it can consciously process: sounds, sights, Bodily sensations, memories, and thoughts all compete for neural resources. Attention acts as a filtering system, helping determine which information receives priority. Scientists studying attention have found that it is not a fixed resource, but a dynamic process that changes throughout the day. Mental fatigue can influence attention, sleep affects it, emotional states can shape it as well. This matters because attention influences how people experience the world around them. Two individuals may encounter similar circumstances, yet focus on very different aspects of those experiences. Modern research suggests that patterns of attention contribute significantly to perceived well-being. The brain is continuously selecting information from an enormous stream of sensory input, constructing an internal representation of reality. Understanding this process reveals something quietly profound. Human experience is not simply a passive recording of external events, it is an active process involving interpretation, selection, and meaning-making occurring moment by moment within the brain. Scientists have also become increasingly interested in the body's remarkable capacity for adaptation. This capacity is sometimes referred to as resilience, although in biological terms it involves many different mechanisms working together. When conditions change, cells adjust their activity. Neural networks reorganize in response to experience. Muscles strengthen following repeated use. The immune system learns from previous encounters with microorganisms. Even the brain itself demonstrates a property known as neuroplasticity, meaning that connections between neurons can change over time. These adaptive abilities help explain why well-being is not a static trait. It evolves throughout life. Experiences, habits, environments, and learning all contribute to ongoing biological change. From childhood through older adulthood, the body remains engaged in processes of adjustment and renewal. Although aging naturally alters many physiological systems, adaptation continues throughout the lifespan. This perspective offers a scientific reminder that living organisms are not frozen in a single state. They are dynamic systems continuously responding to the world around them. As the evening grows quieter and attention begins to drift gently between thoughts, it can be comforting to consider how much of well-being operates beyond conscious effort. Beneath awareness, cells communicate through intricate chemical signals. Neural networks coordinate perception and memory. Biological clocks keep time with remarkable precision. The cardiovascular system circulates nutrients and oxygen through vast networks of blood vessels. The immune system monitors countless microscopic interactions. Together, these processes form a living system of extraordinary complexity. Most of the time their work remains silent and invisible, yet every moment of life depends upon it. The science of well-being ultimately reveals something both intricate and simple. Human health is not the product of a single factor, but the result of countless processes cooperating across scales, from microscopic cells to entire organ systems. And as these processes continue their steady work through the night, they offer a quiet reminder that life itself is built upon patterns of balance, adaptation, and ongoing connection. When scientists look even deeper into these patterns, they often turn their attention to something less visible but just as important: the chemistry of the body. Within every cell, thousands of chemical reactions occur at any given moment. These reactions are guided by proteins, enzymes, and signaling molecules that determine how energy is used, how materials are built, and how information is transmitted. Well-being, at its most fundamental level, is closely tied to how efficiently and smoothly these chemical processes operate. When energy production inside cells is balanced, the body can maintain stable function. When those processes become disrupted, even slightly, the effects can be felt across multiple systems. It is not necessary to imagine this chemistry as something separate from daily experience. In fact, every thought, every movement, and every sensation depends on it. The brain itself, with its constant electrical activity, is supported by chemical gradients and molecular exchanges that make neural communication possible. Researchers often describe the brain as both an electrical and chemical system at the same time, where signals are passed not only through electrical impulses, but also through neurotransmitters that influence mood, attention, and perception. This layered communication system helps explain why well-being is influenced by so many different factors, from sleep and nutrition to stress and environmental conditions. One of the most studied chemical systems in the context of well-being involves neurotransmitters, which are molecules that allow neurons to communicate with each other. These include substances such as serotonin, dopamine, and gamma-aminobutyric acid, often abbreviated as GABA. Each of these plays a different role in regulating brain activity. Serotonin is involved in mood stability and general emotional balance. Dopamine contributes to motivation and reward processing. GABA helps regulate neural activity by promoting calmness within the brain's networks. It is important to understand that these chemicals do not act in isolation or represent simple switches for specific emotions. Instead, they function as part of a highly interconnected system. Their effects depend on timing, location, receptor sensitivity, and interactions with other biological signals. Modern neuroscience emphasizes that well-being cannot be reduced to a single chemical level. Rather, it emerges from patterns of activity across many systems working together in complex coordination. This perspective replaces older simplified ideas with a more accurate understanding of how the brain operates as a dynamic, adaptive network. Another quiet but important aspect of well-being involves the digestive system, often referred to as the gut. This system is responsible for breaking down food, absorbing nutrients, and supporting energy balance. However, research in recent decades has revealed that the gut plays a more complex role than previously understood. It is home to trillions of microorganisms collectively known as the microbiome. These microorganisms include bacteria, fungi, and other microscopic life forms that live in close relationship with the human body. Far from being passive passengers, they actively participate in digestion and produce a variety of chemical compounds that can influence other systems in the body. Some of these compounds interact with the immune system, while others may influence neural pathways through communication channels that scientists are still working to fully understand. The relationship between the gut and the brain is sometimes described as the gut-brain axis, a two-way communication system that highlights how deeply interconnected the body truly is. This means that well-being is influenced not only by what happens in the brain, but also by processes occurring in distant parts of the body. It is another example of how health emerges from integration rather than isolation. The immune system also plays a subtle but essential role in well-being. Its primary function is to detect and respond to harmful agents such as viruses and bacteria. However, it also interacts continuously with other biological systems even in the absence of infection. Immune cells release signaling molecules that can influence inflammation levels throughout the body. While inflammation is a natural and necessary response to injury or threat, its regulation is important for maintaining balance. Scientists have discovered that prolonged or excessive inflammation can affect energy levels, cognitive function, and overall physical comfort. At the same time, a properly functioning immune system is constantly adapting to new information, learning from past exposures, and maintaining readiness for future challenges. This adaptive quality mirrors other biological systems, reinforcing the idea that the body is designed for continuous adjustment rather than fixed stability. The immune system, like the brain and nervous system, is not isolated in its function. It communicates with many other parts of the body, forming part of a larger network of coordination that contributes to well-being in subtle but meaningful ways. As these systems interact, the concept of stress becomes important in understanding well-being. Stress is often thought of as something purely psychological, but scientifically it refers to the body's response to perceived challenges or demands. When a situation is interpreted as requiring action, the brain activates a series of physiological responses. Hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline are released, preparing the body to respond. Heart rate may increase, energy availability shifts, attention becomes more focused. These changes are not inherently negative. In fact, they are part of a highly adaptive system designed to help organisms respond to challenges effectively. However, when stress responses remain active for extended periods without adequate recovery, they can influence other biological systems. This is why balance is so important. The same mechanisms that support survival in short-term situations can affect well-being if they remain engaged continuously. Researchers studying stress often emphasize the importance of recovery periods, where the body is able to return to baseline conditions and restore equilibrium. Sleep, relaxation, and safe environments all contribute to this recovery process, allowing biological systems to reset and maintain long-term stability. Another subtle but important factor in well-being is the role of memory. The brain does not simply record experiences like a camera. Instead, it reconstructs memories each time they are recalled. This means that memory is influenced by current emotions, context, and new information. Over time, memories can shift slightly, becoming integrated with later experiences. This reconstructive nature of memory plays a role in shaping how individuals interpret their lives. It also means that well-being is influenced not only by present conditions, but by how past experiences are remembered and understood. Neuroscientists studying memory have found that the brain actively organizes and reorganizes stored information during rest and sleep. This process helps integrate new learning with existing knowledge. It also contributes to emotional regulation by gradually processing experiences in a way that supports long-term stability. In this sense, memory is not just a storage system. It is an active participant in the ongoing construction of experience. As the body continues its quiet work through the night, all of these systems remain in motion. Chemical reactions proceed within cells. Neural networks maintain communication. Hormones circulate through the bloodstream. Immune cells continue monitoring the internal environment. The digestive system interacts with microbial communities. Biological clocks guide rhythms across multiple levels. Each system operates with its own patterns, yet remains connected to the others in subtle and continuous ways. Well-being emerges from this coordination, not as a single event, but as an ongoing state of balance maintained through countless interactions. The more scientists learn, the more they recognize that life is not defined by isolated processes but by relationships between processes. Even when the body appears still, it is engaged in constant activity that supports survival, adaptation, and renewal. And so, as attention naturally softens and thoughts begin to slow, it becomes possible to sense the quiet depth of this ongoing biological activity, not as something to analyze or control, but simply as a reminder that beneath every moment of awareness, a vast and coordinated system continues its work without interruption, maintaining the delicate conditions that make experience itself possible. As this quiet biological activity continues, it becomes helpful to consider how deeply the concept of balance extends into nearly every layer of well-being. Even at the level of individual cells, balance is not a static condition but a constant adjustment. Cells regulate the movement of ions across membranes, carefully controlling what enters and leaves their internal environment. This regulation allows them to maintain stability while still responding to changes around them. In a similar way, tissues and organs operate within ranges of flexibility rather than fixed points. The liver adjusts its metabolic activity depending on nutrient availability. The lungs adapt their oxygen exchange based on physical demand. The kidneys continuously filter and fine-tune the composition of blood. Each of these systems contributes to an overall sense of internal stability, yet none of them function as isolated units. Instead, they communicate through feedback loops that ensure coordination across the body. Scientists often describe these interactions as networks of regulation, where signals are constantly exchanged to maintain equilibrium. From this perspective, well-being is not something that is achieved once and held permanently. It is a continuous process of adjustment that unfolds second by second, even during rest. This idea of continuous adjustment becomes especially clear when observing how the nervous system responds to changing conditions. Neurons do not simply transmit signals at fixed rates. Instead, their activity is influenced by a wide variety of internal and external factors. The availability of nutrients, the presence of hormones, and the pattern of incoming sensory information all shape neural behavior. Over time, neural networks can strengthen or weaken connections based on patterns of use. This property allows the brain to adapt to experience in a highly flexible way. It also explains why learning and memory are not separate from well-being, but deeply integrated into it. When new information is processed, neural pathways are reorganized. When familiar patterns are repeated, those pathways become more efficient. Even during periods of rest, the brain continues refining these connections, integrating recent experiences with existing knowledge. This ongoing refinement helps maintain cognitive stability while allowing for growth and adaptation. In this sense, the nervous system behaves less like a fixed structure and more like a living landscape that gradually reshapes itself in response to experience. As attention gently shifts between different states, the role of breathing becomes another subtle yet important element of well-being. Breathing is unique because it is both automatic and partially under voluntary control. This dual nature allows it to serve as a bridge between conscious experience and unconscious regulation. The respiratory system continuously exchanges gases with the environment, bringing oxygen into the body and releasing carbon dioxide. These gases are essential for cellular energy production and metabolic balance. What is often less noticed is how closely breathing patterns are connected to emotional and physiological states. Changes in breathing rate and depth can influence the activity of the nervous system, subtly affecting levels of alertness and calmness. This does not require deliberate effort or conscious manipulation. Even without awareness, breathing naturally adjusts to the body's needs throughout the day and night. During sleep, for example, breathing patterns shift in response to changing stages of brain activity. This quiet synchronization between respiration and neural function illustrates again how deeply interconnected the body's systems truly are. Another layer of well-being science involves the relationship between environment and internal biology. Humans exist within a constant exchange of information with their surroundings. Temperature changes influence metabolic activity. Sounds affect attention and emotional processing. Even subtle variations in air quality can influence respiratory and immune function. Modern environments often differ significantly from the conditions in which human biology evolved, yet the body continues to respond using ancient regulatory systems. This adaptability allows humans to live in a wide range of climates and settings, but it also means that environmental patterns can have meaningful effects on physiological balance. Researchers studying environmental health often emphasize that well-being is shaped not only by internal biology, but also by the spaces in which life unfolds. Natural environments, in particular, appear to support certain aspects of cognitive and emotional restoration. While the precise mechanisms are still being explored, it is clear that the boundary between organism and environment is not fixed. Instead, it is a continuous exchange where external conditions and internal states influence one another in ongoing dialogue. As night deepens, the body gradually enters a state where restorative processes become more prominent. Cellular repair mechanisms become more active. Energy usage shifts toward maintenance rather than activity. Neural activity organizes into patterns associated with rest and memory processing. Hormonal cycles follow rhythms that support recovery and balance. These changes are not abrupt, but unfold gradually, guided by internal timing systems that have evolved over vast periods of time. Even in this quieter state, the body is far from inactive. Instead, it engages in a different kind of work, one that prioritizes restoration and preparation for future activity. Scientists often describe sleep as a fundamental biological process necessary for long-term stability. Without it, multiple systems begin to lose efficiency. Attention becomes less stable. Emotional regulation becomes more difficult. Physical recovery slows. These observations highlight the importance of rest as an integral component of well-being rather than a separate or optional condition. Sleep, in this sense, is not an interruption of life but an essential continuation of it in another form. And so, as all of these systems continue their quiet coordination, there is a sense in which well-being can be understood not as something distant or abstract, but as the ongoing harmony of processes already present within the body. Each breath, each cellular exchange, each neural signal contributes to a larger pattern that sustains life moment by moment. Even when not consciously observed, this pattern remains active, adjusting and responding with remarkable precision. The science of well-being ultimately reveals a system that is both intricate and steady, complex in its details yet unified in its purpose. And as awareness begins to soften and drift, it becomes possible to recognize that beneath every thought and sensation, this vast network of biological activity continues its gentle work, maintaining the conditions in which experience itself quietly unfolds. As this continuous biological activity carries on, scientists often return to a simple but profound idea. The human body is always in motion, even in stillness. What appears calm on the outside is, on the inside, a carefully coordinated system of constant change. Blood flows through an estimated 60,000 miles of vessels, delivering oxygen and nutrients while removing waste products. The heart maintains a steady rhythm, adjusting subtly to the needs of the body in real time. With every beat, it responds not just to physical demand, but also to signals from the nervous system, emotional state, and metabolic activity. This coordination happens without conscious direction. It is regulated by layers of feedback systems that continuously measure and adjust internal conditions. Well-being, from this perspective, is not a fixed destination but a living process sustained by thousands of interacting rhythms. Each rhythm has its own timing, yet all are nested within one another, forming a larger pattern of coherence that supports life. At the cellular level, energy production remains one of the most fundamental processes underlying well-being. Inside tiny structures called mitochondria, nutrients are converted into usable energy through a sequence of chemical reactions. This process allows cells to perform their specialized functions, whether in the brain, muscles, or internal organs. What makes this especially remarkable is that every moment of human experience depends on this invisible activity. Thinking, moving, and even resting require continuous energy supply. Scientists studying cellular biology often emphasize that energy is not stored in a single reservoir, but is constantly produced and consumed in real time. This dynamic flow ensures that the body can respond quickly to changing demands. When energy production is balanced with energy use, systems operate smoothly. When this balance is disrupted, the effects can ripple through multiple layers of biology. Yet even then, the body often works quietly to restore equilibrium, adjusting metabolic pathways and reallocating resources to maintain stability. The nervous system adds another dimension to this ongoing coordination. It not only processes external information but also monitors internal conditions with remarkable precision. Specialized receptors throughout the body detect changes in temperature, pressure, chemical composition, and tissue status. These signals travel through neural pathways to the brain and spinal cord, where they are integrated into a continuously updated representation of the body's state. This internal mapping allows the brain to regulate functions such as heart rate, digestion, and hormone release without conscious effort. It also contributes to the subjective sense of comfort or discomfort that guides behavior. In this way, well-being is closely tied to the body's ability to interpret and respond to its own internal signals. When these signals are balanced and clearly regulated, the body tends to function with greater ease. When they become disrupted or overstimulated, the experience of imbalance can arise. Yet even in such moments, regulatory systems remain active, working to restore stability through subtle adjustments. Another important aspect of well-being science involves the concept of allostasis, which refers to the process of achieving stability through change. Unlike homeostasis, which focuses on maintaining internal balance around fixed set points, allostasis emphasizes flexibility. The body anticipates future demands and adjusts its internal state accordingly. For example, before physical activity begins, the heart rate may increase slightly in preparation. Hormone levels may shift in anticipation of stress or exertion. These predictive adjustments allow the body to respond more efficiently to changing conditions. Researchers view allostasis as a key feature of adaptive biological systems. It reflects the idea that well-being is not simply about maintaining sameness, but about preparing for and responding to variability. This perspective highlights the intelligence of biological systems, which continuously learn from patterns of experience and adjust future responses accordingly. As attention continues to move gently through these ideas, it becomes clear that perception itself plays an important role in shaping well-being. The brain does not passively receive information. Instead, it actively constructs perception by combining sensory input with prior knowledge and expectation. This process allows humans to make sense of a complex and constantly changing environment. However, it also means that experience is influenced by internal models of reality. Two individuals in the same situation may perceive it differently based on attention, memory, and interpretation. Neuroscientists describe this as a predictive system, where the brain constantly generates expectations and updates them based on incoming information. This predictive nature helps the body respond efficiently. But it also shows that perception is not a direct reflection of the external world. It is a carefully constructed interpretation shaped by both current input and past experience. Understanding this process reveals how deeply interconnected cognition and well-being truly are. In the background of all these processes, the endocrine system quietly coordinates chemical communication throughout the body. Hormones travel through the bloodstream, carrying signals that influence growth, metabolism, mood, and reproduction. Unlike the rapid signaling of neurons, hormonal communication often operates on slower timescales, allowing for longer-lasting effects. This slower rhythm complements the faster electrical activity of the nervous system, creating a balanced interaction between immediate responses and sustained regulation. Hormones such as cortisol, melatonin, insulin, and thyroid hormones each play distinct roles in maintaining internal stability. Their levels rise and fall in response to both internal states and external conditions. The coordination of these chemical signals ensures that the body can adapt not only moment to moment, but also across longer cycles such as days, seasons, and developmental stages. This layered system of regulation contributes to the continuity of well-being over time. As night continues and biological rhythms deepen into restorative patterns, the body enters a state of quiet integration. Information gathered throughout the day is processed and reorganized. Cellular repair becomes more prominent. Energy use shifts toward maintenance and recovery. Neural activity moves through cycles that support memory consolidation and emotional processing. These processes occur without conscious awareness, yet they form an essential foundation for mental and physical stability. Sleep research consistently shows that these nighttime cycles are not passive. They represent an active phase of biological organization in which multiple systems coordinate to restore balance. The brain, in particular, appears to engage in processes that refine connections, clear metabolic byproducts, and integrate new experiences with existing knowledge. This nightly cycle of restoration reflects a broader principle in biology, that periods of activity are balanced by periods of recovery, each essential to the other. And so, as all of these layers continue their work beneath awareness, there is a quiet sense of continuity running through them. Cells, organs, and systems all participate in a shared process of regulation and adaptation. Nothing operates in isolation. Every function is connected to others through networks of feedback, communication, and timing. Well-being in this light is not something added onto life, but something arising from life itself as it organizes and maintains its own conditions. Even as awareness begins to fade and thoughts become softer, these processes continue uninterrupted, forming a steady background rhythm that carries on through every moment of existence, quietly sustaining the conditions in which life remains possible. As the body continues its quiet coordination through the night, one of the most delicate systems at work is the balance between activity and restoration in the brain's large-scale networks. Among these networks is something scientists often refer to as the default mode network, a pattern of brain activity that becomes more prominent when external tasks fade into the background. This network is involved in internal reflection, memory integration, and the quiet organization of thoughts that are not directed toward the outside world. During restful states, including moments before sleep and during lighter stages of sleep, this system appears to shift and reorganize information gathered throughout the day. Researchers studying this activity have observed that the brain does not simply shut down when external demands decrease. Instead, it turns inward, processing experiences in a way that helps integrate them into a broader sense of continuity. This internal activity is not necessarily tied to conscious awareness, yet it plays a meaningful role in how experiences are stored, understood, and gradually woven into memory. From a well-being perspective, this suggests that even moments of apparent mental stillness are filled with subtle organization, as the brain continues its quiet work of maintaining coherence across time. Another system that plays a gentle but important role in well-being is the autonomic nervous system, which regulates many functions that occur without conscious control. It is often described in terms of two complementary branches that work together to maintain balance. One branch is associated with activation and readiness, while the other is associated with rest and restoration. These are not opposing forces in conflict, but rather coordinated parts of a single regulatory system. Throughout the day, their activity shifts in response to internal needs and external conditions. During periods of activity or challenge, the body prepares itself for action. During periods of safety and rest, energy is directed toward repair and recovery. One of the most interesting aspects of this system is how sensitive it is to subtle cues. Even small changes in breathing patterns, posture, or environmental context can influence its activity. This means that well-being is continuously shaped by a dynamic interaction between internal physiology and external experience. Over time, repeated patterns of regulation help establish a general sense of stability, allowing the body to move more easily between states of activation and rest as needed. Closely connected to this regulatory system is the role of interoception, which refers to the brain's ability to sense internal bodily signals. This includes awareness of heartbeat, breathing, hunger, temperature, and other internal conditions. Interoception does not usually rise to conscious attention in detail, but it provides a continuous background stream of information that helps the brain maintain balance. Scientists have found that this internal awareness contributes to emotional experience as well. Emotions are not only psychological states, but also involve bodily signals that are interpreted by the brain. A change in heart rate, muscle tension, or breathing pattern can influence how emotions are experienced and understood. This integration between body and mind suggests that emotional well-being is closely tied to the clarity and regulation of internal bodily signals. When these signals are well integrated, emotional experiences tend to feel more stable and grounded. When they are less regulated, emotional states may feel more variable or difficult to interpret. Even so, the system remains adaptive, continuously working to interpret and adjust internal conditions in response to changing circumstances. As the night progresses, another important concept becomes relevant to understanding well-being: the gradual accumulation and release of biological and psychological load. Throughout the day, the body and brain respond to countless small demands. Energy is used for thinking, moving, responding, and adapting. Over time, this creates a need for restoration, not as a single event, but as a gradual process. Sleep provides one of the primary environments in which this restoration occurs. During deeper stages of sleep, physiological activity shifts in ways that support cellular repair, energy restoration, and neural recalibration. Scientists continue to study the precise mechanisms involved, but it is clear that sleep is not a uniform state. It moves through cycles, each associated with different patterns of brain activity and bodily function. These cycles allow different types of restoration to occur in a coordinated sequence. Rather than treating sleep as a single, uninterrupted block, researchers often describe it as a structured process of repeated transitions, each contributing to overall recovery. This cyclical nature reflects a broader principle in biology, where repetition and rhythm are central to maintaining stability over time. At a more fundamental level, well-being is also influenced by the gradual process of aging, which represents another form of long-term biological change. Aging is not a sudden shift, but a slow transformation that occurs across decades. Cells accumulate experiences of stress and repair. Proteins are continuously rebuilt. DNA is copied and maintained with remarkable accuracy, yet small variations naturally arise over time. Biological systems respond to these changes with adaptive mechanisms that attempt to preserve function. While aging is associated with gradual shifts in physical capacity and resilience, it is also accompanied by continued adaptation. The body does not stop responding to its environment. Instead, it adjusts to new conditions with changing efficiency and strategy. Researchers studying aging often emphasize that it is not simply a process of decline, but a complex interaction between damage, repair, and adaptation. This perspective aligns with the broader understanding of well-being as a dynamic process rather than a fixed state. Even across long spans of time, the body remains engaged in continuous regulation, maintaining balance within changing constraints. And so, as these systems continue their quiet activity through the deeper hours of rest, there is a sense of layered continuity that extends from the smallest cellular processes to the broader rhythms of life itself. The brain organizes memory and experience. The body regulates energy and repair. The nervous system coordinates internal and external awareness. Hormonal and immune systems maintain communication across distant regions. Each layer contributes to a larger pattern of coherence that supports existence without requiring conscious effort. In this way, well-being can be understood not as something achieved, but as something continuously maintained through countless interactions occurring beneath awareness. And as attention softens further into stillness, these processes remain present, unfolding in steady rhythms that quietly sustain the conditions in which life, in all its subtle complexity, continues to unfold. As the night continues to unfold, the body moves deeper into a state where restoration becomes the dominant theme across nearly every system. Yet even within this restorative state, there is still complexity, because restoration itself is not a single process but a collection of many overlapping processes working at different speeds. Some occur within seconds, such as the adjustment of breathing patterns in response to changing oxygen needs. Others unfold over minutes or hours, such as the regulation of hormone levels or the gradual shift in neural activity across sleep cycles. Still others operate over much longer timescales, including cellular repair mechanisms that respond to accumulated stress from the day. These layered timelines create a rhythm of maintenance that is both immediate and long-term at the same time. Scientists often describe this as multi-scale regulation, where different biological systems operate on different clocks yet remain coordinated through feedback and signaling. This coordination ensures that no single process overwhelms the others, allowing the body to remain stable while still adapting continuously. Within this multi-scale regulation, one of the most important processes is cellular repair. Every day, cells experience small amounts of stress from normal function. Energy production, mechanical strain, and environmental exposure all contribute to microscopic changes within cellular structures. During rest, specialized repair systems become more active, identifying and correcting these changes. DNA repair mechanisms work to maintain genetic stability. Protein quality control systems remove or refold damaged proteins. Cellular membranes adjust their composition to preserve function. These processes are highly efficient, yet they are also ongoing and never fully complete. There is always a balance between damage and repair, and well-being depends in part on how effectively this balance is maintained over time. Importantly, repair does not mean returning to an exact previous state. Instead, it often involves subtle adjustments that improve resilience for future challenges. In this way, the body not only restores itself, but also learns from experience at a biological level. As these internal processes continue, the brain enters deeper stages of sleep where activity patterns shift significantly. Electrical rhythms become slower and more synchronized across large networks of neurons. This synchronization is not random, it reflects organized patterns that support memory processing and neural maintenance. During these stages, the brain appears to replay and reorganize patterns of activity that were experienced during wakefulness. This replay is not a conscious experience, but rather a neural process that helps integrate new information into existing structures. Researchers studying sleep have found that this activity contributes to learning and long-term memory stability. It is as if the brain is gently sorting through the day's experiences, strengthening some connections while allowing others to fade. This selective reinforcement helps maintain cognitive efficiency, ensuring that important information is retained while unnecessary noise is gradually reduced. From a well-being perspective, this highlights that rest is not passive emptiness but an active form of organization that supports clarity and mental balance. At the same time, the body's metabolic systems continue their careful regulation of energy use. During wakefulness, energy demand fluctuates depending on activity levels. During sleep, energy consumption shifts toward maintenance functions. The brain, despite being at rest, still requires a significant portion of the body's energy supply. However, the allocation of that energy changes in meaningful ways. More resources are directed toward repair, regulation, and structural maintenance. This redistribution reflects the body's ability to prioritize different functions depending on context. Scientists often emphasize that energy in biological systems is not simply stored and used like fuel in a machine. Instead, it is continuously managed, distributed, and transformed across multiple pathways. This dynamic flow ensures that each system receives what it needs when it needs it, contributing to overall stability and efficiency. Well-being, in this sense, depends not only on the presence of energy, but on its careful coordination across many interacting systems. Another subtle but important aspect of nighttime biology involves temperature regulation. The human body naturally experiences small fluctuations in core temperature throughout the day and night. As sleep begins, core temperature tends to decrease slightly, which is associated with the onset of deeper rest. This reduction in temperature is not a passive cooling, but an actively regulated process involving changes in blood flow, metabolism, and hormonal activity. These adjustments help create conditions that support restorative sleep. Even small shifts in temperature can influence sleep quality, demonstrating how sensitive biological systems are to internal and external cues. The regulation of temperature is another example of how well-being depends on continuous fine-tuning rather than fixed settings. The body does not aim for a single unchanging state, but instead moves through carefully coordinated ranges that support different phases of activity and rest. As these rhythms continue, the concept of biological coherence becomes increasingly relevant. Coherence refers to the degree to which different systems within the body operate in a coordinated and harmonious way. When heart rhythms, breathing patterns, and neural activity become more synchronized, researchers often observe states associated with relaxation and recovery. This does not mean that all systems become identical in their behavior, but rather that their timing becomes more aligned. Such alignment can occur naturally during sleep or relaxation, reflecting the body's inherent tendency toward organized patterns. Scientists studying coherence suggest that it reflects a form of internal communication where systems adjust to one another in real time. This continuous adjustment helps maintain stability while allowing flexibility. It is one of the reasons why the body can function as a unified whole despite being composed of many distinct and specialized parts. Even as these complex processes unfold, there is a quiet simplicity to the overall pattern. The body is not striving toward perfection or final completion. Instead, it is engaged in ongoing maintenance, adaptation, and renewal. Each system contributes to this shared process in its own way, yet all are connected through continuous communication. The nervous system, immune system, endocrine system, and metabolic systems all participate in this coordination, forming an integrated network of life-sustaining activity. Well-being emerges from this network not as a separate entity but as a natural outcome of its functioning. It is the result of countless small adjustments occurring across time and space within the body. And so, as the night reaches its deeper stages, and external awareness fades further into stillness, these processes continue with quiet persistence. Cells repair, networks reorganize, rhythms synchronize, and energy flows through carefully balanced pathways. Nothing in the body is truly idle, yet nothing is rushed. Everything moves according to its own rhythm while remaining part of a larger coordinated system. In this ongoing balance of activity and restoration, life continues its subtle work, maintaining the conditions in which awareness itself can eventually return with clarity and continuity when morning arrives. As the night approaches its deepest stretch, the body gradually transitions into a more stable and sustained pattern of restoration, where the boundaries between individual processes become less noticeable and the overall system feels increasingly unified in its activity. In this phase, scientists often observe that physiological rhythms settle into slower and more synchronized patterns, as if the entire organism is moving into a shared tempo. This does not mean that activity decreases in importance, but rather that it becomes more internally focused and less responsive to external demands. The brain, for example, reduces its sensitivity to outside stimuli, while increasing the coordination of internal networks involved in maintenance and memory processing. The body's energy systems also shift toward conservation and repair, allowing resources to be directed toward essential functions that support long-term stability. What is remarkable in this state is not the absence of activity, but the harmony in which different systems operate together, each following its own rhythm, while contributing to a larger pattern of biological coherence. Within this deeper phase of rest, one of the most important ongoing processes is the refinement of neural connections. Throughout waking life, the brain is constantly exposed to vast amounts of information. Not all of this information can be retained with equal importance, so during sleep, the brain appears to engage in selective processing. Some neural pathways are strengthened based on repeated use or significance, while others are gradually weakened or pruned. This process is not random but highly organized, reflecting patterns of experience and learning. Researchers studying synaptic plasticity have found that sleep plays a critical role in maintaining the efficiency of neural networks. By reducing unnecessary activity and reinforcing meaningful connections, the brain preserves its ability to function effectively while preventing overload. This ongoing refinement contributes to mental clarity and emotional stability over time. It also demonstrates that well-being is not simply about accumulation, but also about careful reduction and reorganization, allowing the system to remain adaptable and efficient. At the same time, the body's hormonal systems continue their subtle regulation of internal conditions. Hormones such as growth hormone, melatonin, and cortisol follow rhythmic cycles that are closely tied to sleep stages. Growth hormone, for example, is often released in greater amounts during deep sleep, supporting tissue repair and cellular regeneration. Melatonin helps regulate the timing of sleep and wakefulness, signaling to the body that it is time to enter a restorative state. Cortisol, which is associated with alertness and metabolic activity, tends to follow a pattern that prepares the body for waking in the later stages of sleep. These hormonal rhythms are not isolated events but part of a carefully coordinated system that aligns internal physiology with external cycles of day and night. The synchronization of these signals ensures that different aspects of the body's function are aligned in time, contributing to a smoother transition between rest and activity. Another important layer of well-being during this phase involves the continued activity of the immune system. While the body is at rest, immune cells remain active in monitoring and maintaining internal conditions. Some immune processes are enhanced during sleep, supporting the body's ability to respond to potential challenges. Inflammatory regulation also plays a role, as the body works to maintain balance between necessary immune activity and excessive responses that could disrupt stability. Scientists have observed that sleep and immune function are closely linked, with each influencing the other. Adequate rest supports immune efficiency, while immune activity can also influence sleep patterns. This reciprocal relationship highlights once again that well-being is not governed by isolated systems, but by continuous interaction between multiple layers of biology. Even during the quietest moments of rest, the body remains engaged in subtle defense, repair, and regulation. As these processes continue, the brain's energy consumption becomes more focused and efficient. Although overall activity patterns slow in certain regions, other areas remain active in ways that support integration and maintenance. Glucose metabolism, which provides energy to brain cells, is carefully regulated to match these changing demands. This ensures that neural systems receive a steady supply of energy without unnecessary fluctuation. Researchers have found that the brain is particularly sensitive to energy balance, and even small disruptions can influence cognitive performance and emotional regulation. During sleep, however, this balance is more easily maintained, allowing the brain to operate in a state of optimized efficiency. This careful management of energy reflects a broader principle in biological systems. Stability is not achieved through rigidity, but through flexible regulation that responds to changing conditions while maintaining overall coherence. Within this quiet state, sensory processing also undergoes significant changes. While external awareness is reduced, the brain does not completely shut off from the environment. Instead, it filters incoming signals more selectively, prioritizing those that are most relevant or significant. This allows the body to maintain a degree of responsiveness even during deep rest. Sounds, temperature changes, or physical sensations can still be detected, though they are often processed in a less conscious way. This selective sensitivity reflects the brain's ability to balance protection and rest, ensuring that important signals can still be recognized without disrupting restorative processes. It is another example of how well-being depends on dynamic regulation rather than complete inactivity. The system remains open to the world while still prioritizing internal restoration. As time continues to pass through the night, the cycles of sleep gradually move through their structured phases, each with its own characteristic patterns of brain and body activity. Light sleep, deep sleep, and periods of rapid eye movement form a repeating sequence that supports different aspects of restoration. Deep sleep is often associated with physical repair and energy recovery, while lighter stages may support transitions and integration. Rapid eye movement sleep, in particular, is linked with vivid neural activity and memory processing. These cycles repeat multiple times across the night, forming a rhythmic architecture that underlies the entire sleep process. Scientists continue to study the precise functions of each stage, but it is clear that this cyclical structure is essential for maintaining both physical and mental well-being. The repetition of these cycles reflects a broader principle in biology, where rhythm and recurrence provide stability within continuous change. And so, as the body moves through these layered stages of rest, there is a quiet sense in which all systems are participating in a shared pattern of renewal. Nothing is isolated, and nothing operates independently. Instead, each function contributes to a larger integrated process that sustains life across time. The brain refines its networks, the body repairs its tissues, the immune system maintains its vigilance, and hormonal systems regulate internal conditions. Together, these processes form a continuous flow of biological activity that supports stability, adaptation, and recovery. As the night reaches its quietest point, this coordinated activity continues without interruption, unfolding in slow and steady rhythms beneath the surface of awareness. And within this ongoing harmony, there is a simple but profound continuity, life maintaining itself through countless small adjustments, each one contributing silently to the larger pattern of well-being that carries forward into the return of morning light. As the final stretch of the night settles in, the body begins a gradual transition that quietly prepares it for the return of wakefulness. Even before awareness begins to surface, internal systems are already shifting their patterns in subtle and carefully timed ways. This transition is not abrupt, but instead unfolds through overlapping biological signals that gently guide the organism from deep restoration toward renewed readiness. Hormonal rhythms begin to adjust, with gradual changes in cortisol levels helping to prepare metabolic systems for increased activity. Neural activity becomes slightly more responsive to external stimuli, although still filtered through the protective layers of sleep. Temperature regulation also begins to shift, with a slow rise in core body temperature that aligns with the approaching wake cycle. These changes are not isolated events but coordinated expressions of a larger biological rhythm that has been running throughout the entire night, ensuring that the transition between rest and wakefulness occurs smoothly, rather than suddenly. During this phase, the brain continues its quiet integration of information processed during earlier sleep cycles. Memory systems remain active, refining and organizing the experiences of the previous day. Scientists have observed that different types of memory may be processed in different stages of sleep, with emotional memories, procedural skills, and factual information each undergoing subtle forms of consolidation. This does not involve conscious recollection, but rather the gradual strengthening and reorganization of neural connections. The brain appears to evaluate patterns of experience, reinforcing those that are useful and allowing others to fade or become less prominent. This selective refinement supports clarity and cognitive efficiency upon waking. It also contributes to emotional balance, as experiences are integrated into broader neural networks in a way that reduces fragmentation and enhances coherence. In this sense, the final stages of sleep are not merely about rest, but about preparation for the continuity of thought and awareness that will follow. At the same time, the body's metabolic systems begin to gently increase their readiness for activity. Glucose regulation adjusts in anticipation of future energy demands, ensuring that essential fuel sources will be available when needed. The liver and muscles coordinate their energy storage and release patterns in response to hormonal signals that gradually shift during the late sleep cycle. These adjustments reflect a deeply embedded biological expectation of morning, shaped by evolutionary cycles of light and darkness. Even in the absence of conscious awareness of time, the body remains attuned to these environmental rhythms. This internal anticipation is part of what allows wakefulness to emerge smoothly, without sudden disruption. It is a reminder that biological systems are not only reactive, but also predictive, continuously preparing for changes that are expected based on long-standing environmental patterns. The nervous system, too, begins a subtle recalibration during this time. Autonomic balance shifts toward increased readiness, with a gradual change in the activity of pathways that regulate alertness and arousal. This does not immediately disrupt sleep, but rather sets the stage for a natural transition. Sensory thresholds slowly lower, allowing external stimuli to become more noticeable as wakefulness approaches. However, this increased sensitivity is carefully regulated, ensuring that the transition remains gentle rather than abrupt. Researchers studying sleep-wake transitions often describe this period as a state of gradual emergence, where consciousness returns in layers rather than as a single moment. This layered return reflects the complexity of the systems involved, as multiple networks must shift their activity in coordinated fashion for full wakefulness to occur. As these processes unfold, there is also a continued sense of integration within the brain's large-scale networks. The default mode network, which was active during earlier rest phases, begins to interact more closely with networks involved in attention, perception, and executive function. This interaction supports the gradual reorientation of the mind toward the external environment. At the same time, sensory processing systems begin to increase their responsiveness, preparing to interpret incoming information from the world. Yet even in this transitional phase, there remains a degree of continuity with the internal processing that occurred throughout the night. The brain does not simply switch states, but rather blends them in a coordinated progression that maintains stability while allowing change. One of the most interesting aspects of this transition is the way in which awareness itself begins to reassemble. Conscious experience does not return all at once, but instead emerges through a gradual increase in coherence among neural networks. Early moments of wakefulness may involve fragmented thoughts or partial awareness of surroundings, which slowly coalesce into a more unified sense of self and environment. This process reflects the underlying architecture of the brain, where consciousness arises from the integration of distributed activity across multiple systems. As these systems become more synchronized, clarity increases. Yet even in fully awake states, this integration remains dynamic, continuously adjusting to new information and internal conditions. Throughout this entire transition, the body continues to maintain its essential processes of regulation and balance. Immune activity remains active, metabolic systems remain responsive, and hormonal cycles continue their carefully timed fluctuations. Nothing stops abruptly. Instead, everything shifts in relation to everything else. This interdependence ensures that the transition from sleep to wakefulness is not a rupture but a continuation of the same underlying biological rhythm that has been present all night. The difference lies not in the presence or absence of activity, but in its orientation and focus, as the final moments of sleep give way to the earliest traces of waking awareness. There is a subtle sense of alignment between internal and external worlds. Light entering the environment begins to synchronize with internal biological clocks. Sensory systems become more engaged with surroundings. Cognitive processes begin to organize into more structured patterns of thought. Yet beneath all of this, the same quiet systems of regulation continue their work. Unchanged in their essential purpose, they have not paused or reset, but simply shifted phase, carrying forward the same continuity of life that has been present throughout the night. And so, as wakefulness slowly emerges and the boundary between rest and awareness gently dissolves, what remains constant is the underlying continuity of the body's ongoing activity. Every system, from the smallest cellular process to the largest neural network, has contributed to a shared rhythm of maintenance and renewal. And even as the night comes to an end, that rhythm does not truly stop. It simply continues into a new phase, carrying forward the quiet, steady work of sustaining life into the light of a new day. As wakefulness becomes more stable, the transition from the inner world of sleep to the outer world of daily experience continues to unfold with a quiet sense of continuity. The brain does not fully separate these states, but rather blends them through gradual adjustments in neural activity. Certain regions become more dominant as attention strengthens, especially those involved in sensory processing, decision-making, and goal-directed behavior. At the same time, other networks that were active during sleep-related integration slowly reduce their influence. This shift is not a sudden switch, but a coordinated rebalancing of activity across large-scale brain systems. Researchers studying wake transitions often emphasize that consciousness is highly dynamic, shaped by ongoing interactions between networks rather than a single central control point. This means that even in full wakefulness, there is a subtle layering of processes, with some supporting immediate awareness of the environment and others maintaining internal continuity from previous states. One of the first noticeable changes in early wakefulness is the increasing clarity of sensory perception. Light, sound, temperature, and bodily sensations become more distinctly organized as the brain increases its interpretive processing. Visual information in particular becomes more structured as retinal signals are more precisely mapped into cortical representations. However, this clarity is not simply a passive reception of data. The brain actively constructs perception by combining incoming signals with prior expectations and internal models of the world. This predictive processing allows the mind to interpret incomplete or ambiguous information efficiently. It also means that perception is always a blend of present input and stored experience. In the early moments of waking, this system gradually recalibrates, updating its predictions based on the current environment. This recalibration helps ensure that perception aligns more closely with reality after the altered patterns of sleep have passed. At the same time, the body's physiological systems continue their return to full daytime activity. Heart rate begins to stabilize at a level appropriate for wakefulness, adjusting in response to posture, movement, and environmental demands. Blood pressure follows a similar pattern, gradually increasing from the lower levels often present during deep sleep. These changes are regulated by the autonomic nervous system, which continuously integrates internal signals and external conditions to maintain balance. Breathing also becomes more regular and responsive, supporting the increased metabolic needs of waking life. These shifts are subtle and often unnoticed, yet they reflect a highly coordinated system preparing the body for engagement with the external world. Importantly, these adjustments do not erase the restorative work of sleep. Instead, they build upon it, using the restored energy and repaired systems to support renewed activity. Cognitive processes also begin to organize more clearly during this phase. Attention, which may have been diffuse or fragmented in early wakefulness, gradually becomes more focused and stable. Working memory systems begin to hold and manipulate information more efficiently, allowing for planning, reasoning, and decision-making. The prefrontal cortex, a region associated with higher-order cognitive functions, becomes more active and coordinated with other brain regions. This increased integration supports the ability to manage complex tasks and adapt to changing demands. However, even as these systems strengthen, they remain influenced by prior sleep activity. The quality of sleep from the previous night can significantly affect cognitive performance. emotional regulation, and attention stability. This connection highlights the continuity between sleep and wakefulness, showing that they are not separate states but interdependent phases of a single ongoing cycle. Emotionally, early wakefulness can also involve a gradual stabilization process. The brain's emotional regulation systems, including regions such as the amygdala and prefrontal cortex, begin to coordinate more effectively as activity levels normalize. During sleep, emotional memories are processed and integrated, and this work continues to influence mood upon waking. As neural networks stabilize, emotional responses often become more balanced and less reactive. This does not mean that emotions are suppressed, but rather that they are integrated into a broader context of awareness. Scientists studying emotional regulation emphasize that sleep plays a key role in maintaining this balance, allowing the brain to process emotional experiences in a structured and restorative environment. The transition into wakefulness therefore carries forward the results of this processing, shaping the tone of early experience. Meanwhile, the body's internal rhythms continue to align with environmental cues, especially light. Exposure to morning light plays a significant role in reinforcing circadian timing signals. Specialized cells in the retina detect changes in brightness and communicate this information to the brain's central timing systems. This input helps reinforce the distinction between day and night, supporting the synchronization of internal processes with external cycles. Over time, this daily exposure helps maintain stable sleep-wake rhythms, contributing to long-term well-being. Even subtle changes in light intensity can influence alertness and hormonal regulation, demonstrating how sensitive the body remains to environmental patterns. This sensitivity reflects an evolutionary adaptation that allowed organisms to align their behavior with the natural cycles of the planet. As the morning continues to unfold, metabolic systems become increasingly active. Energy utilization shifts towards supporting movement, cognition, and interaction with the environment. Nutrient processing in the digestive system adjusts in anticipation of food intake, while glucose regulation ensures a stable supply of energy to the brain and muscles. Hormonal systems also continue their rhythmic patterns, supporting alertness and readiness for activity. These processes are not isolated but interconnected, forming a coordinated system that supports the transition into full daily function. The body does not simply wake up in a single moment. Instead, it gradually reorients itself toward external engagement through a series of overlapping adjustments across multiple systems. Throughout this entire process, there remains a quiet continuity that connects the deepest phases of sleep with the most active moments of wakefulness. The same biological systems that maintained restoration during the night now support awareness, movement, and thought during the day. Nothing is discarded or reset. Everything is transformed and repurposed according to context. This continuity reflects one of the most fundamental principles of biology. Stability arises not from permanence, but from ongoing adaptation. Each moment is shaped by the one before it, and each system remains in constant dialogue with both internal and external conditions. And so, as full wakefulness gradually settles in and the rhythms of the day begin to take shape, the underlying processes of the body continue their steady work without interruption. Beneath awareness, cells maintain their cycles of energy production. Neural networks continue their subtle adjustments, and regulatory systems sustain balance across multiple levels. The transition from night to day is not a break in this continuity, but another expression of it. Life moves forward not through sudden shifts, but through gradual and coordinated change, carrying the quiet patterns of the night into the unfolding experiences of the day. As the day becomes fully established, the body settles into a more sustained rhythm of wakeful activity. Yet even this state is far from static. What appears to be a stable daytime condition is actually a continuously adjusting system, responding moment by moment to internal needs and external demands. The nervous system remains highly active, but its activity is now more outwardly directed, focusing on perception, interaction, and coordinated action. Sensory information flows in from the environment and is rapidly processed into meaningful patterns. The brain integrates this information with memory, context, and expectation, allowing behavior to remain adaptive and appropriate to changing conditions. This ongoing integration is effortless in appearance, yet beneath it lies a vast network of neural computation occurring across distributed systems. Well-being during wakefulness depends in part on how smoothly this integration takes place, allowing the individual to engage with the world without excessive internal conflict or fragmentation. At the same time, the body continues its careful regulation of internal energy. Metabolism remains active, balancing energy intake, storage, and expenditure. Even in the absence of food consumption, the body maintains stable glucose levels through tightly controlled biochemical processes. When food is present, digestion and absorption begin a coordinated sequence of steps that convert nutrients into usable energy and building materials. These processes are influenced by hormonal signals, neural input, and local cellular activity, all working together to ensure that resources are distributed where they are needed. This dynamic regulation reflects a central principle in biology. Resources must be continuously allocated in response to changing conditions. There is no single storage or distribution point, but rather a network of systems that adjust in real time. From the perspective of well-being, this means that energy is not simply consumed, but actively managed across multiple layers of organization. The cardiovascular system plays a central role in this distribution. Blood circulates continuously, carrying oxygen, nutrients, hormones, and signaling molecules throughout the body. Each heartbeat contributes to this global exchange, maintaining the conditions necessary for cellular function. The elasticity of blood vessels, the responsiveness of heart muscle, and the regulatory signals from the nervous system all contribute to the stability of this system. Even small changes in physical activity or emotional state can influence cardiovascular dynamics, demonstrating how closely linked internal and external experiences are. Scientists studying this system often emphasize that circulation is not merely a transport mechanism, but a form of communication, allowing distant parts of the body to coordinate their activity. In this way, the cardiovascular system supports well-being not only by delivering resources, but also by enabling systemic integration. As the day progresses, the brain continues to refine its balance between efficiency and flexibility. Neural networks adapt to ongoing experience, strengthening frequently used pathways while allowing less relevant connections to weaken. This adaptive process ensures that cognitive resources are allocated efficiently, supporting learning and decision-making without unnecessary overload. Attention systems remain particularly important in this context, as they determine which information is prioritized at any given moment. Because attention is limited, the brain must constantly select what to focus on and what to ignore. This selection process is influenced by both external stimuli and internal goals, creating a dynamic interaction between perception and intention. Over time, repeated patterns of attention shape how individuals experience their environment, influencing habits, preferences, and even emotional tendencies. Well-being is therefore closely tied to the stability and flexibility of attention, as it determines how effectively the mind can navigate the complexity of daily life. Emotional regulation continues to play a subtle but important role throughout the waking day. The brain constantly evaluates incoming information for significance, assigning emotional value based on context, memory, and internal state. These evaluations help guide behavior, highlighting what may require attention or response. At the same time, higher-order brain regions work to modulate emotional reactions, ensuring that responses remain proportionate and appropriate. This balance between reactivity and regulation is essential for maintaining psychological stability. When functioning smoothly, it allows individuals to experience emotions without being overwhelmed by them. Scientific research suggests that this balance is supported by ongoing communication between different brain regions, particularly those involved in emotional processing and executive control. These interactions are not fixed but continually adjusted based on experience, learning, and current conditions. Throughout the day, the body's hormonal systems maintain their rhythmic influence. Cortisol levels typically follow a daily cycle, supporting alertness in the morning and gradually decreasing toward the evening. Other hormones, such as insulin and thyroid hormones, regulate energy availability and metabolic rate. These hormonal patterns are not isolated events but part of a broader temporal organization that aligns internal physiology with external cycles. This alignment helps ensure that the body is prepared for activity during the day and restoration during the night. Scientists refer to this coordination as circadian regulation, a system that integrates environmental cues with internal biological timing. Light exposure, meal timing, physical activity, and social interaction all contribute to shaping these rhythms. Over time, consistent patterns reinforce stability, while irregular patterns can introduce variability in physiological function. From a well-being perspective, this highlights the importance of temporal structure in maintaining internal balance. Even during periods of mental focus or physical activity, the body continues to engage in background maintenance processes. Cellular repair does not stop during the day but continues at a slower, steady pace. Immune surveillance remains active, monitoring for signs of imbalance or disturbance. Neural systems continue to reorganize in response to experience, even when attention is directed elsewhere. This simultaneous layering of activity reflects the remarkable efficiency of biological systems where multiple processes operate in parallel without interference. It also illustrates that well-being is not confined to specific moments of rest or activity, but is distributed continuously across time. Every moment contains both engagement and maintenance, action and regulation, movement and stability. As awareness moves through the afternoon and toward the later hours of the day, subtle shifts in energy and attention may begin to emerge. These shifts are part of natural cycles of alertness that reflect underlying biological rhythms. Energy levels may fluctuate slightly, attention may become more variable, and the need for short periods of rest or reorientation may increase. These variations are normal expressions of the body's dynamic regulation, not signs of imbalance. They reflect the ongoing interaction between metabolic processes, neural activity, and environmental conditions. Understanding these rhythms helps reveal that well-being is not a constant peak of energy or focus, but a flowing pattern of variation and adjustment. And so, as the day continues its quiet progression, the same systems that supported restoration during the night now support engagement with the world. The transition between states is not a break but a continuation of the same underlying biological coordination. Cells, tissues, and networks remain in constant communication, adjusting to the changing demands of time and environment. Beneath the surface of daily experience, this coordinated activity continues without interruption, maintaining the conditions that allow thought, perception, and action to unfold. Life, in its most fundamental form, remains a process of ongoing balance, continuously shaped by the interplay of stability and change. As the afternoon gradually gives way toward the quieter edges of the day, the body begins to show another subtle layer of its rhythmic design. Energy does not simply decline or rise in a linear way. Instead, it moves in gentle waves shaped by internal clocks, metabolic cycles, and accumulated activity from earlier hours. This natural variation is part of what scientists describe as ultradian rhythms, shorter cycles that operate within the broader circadian framework. These rhythms influence alertness, focus, and even emotional tone across the day. At certain points, the nervous system becomes slightly more efficient, allowing for clearer thinking and quicker responses. At other times, there is a soft reduction in cognitive sharpness, not as a failure, but as a natural part of biological pacing. The body is not designed for constant peak performance. Instead, it is designed for variation, where periods of engagement are balanced with quieter intervals that allow subtle recovery even during wakefulness. Within this shifting landscape, the brain continues to manage a remarkable balance between external attention and internal processing. Sensory systems remain open to the environment, but their interpretation becomes influenced by accumulated fatigue, recent experiences, and current physiological state. This means that perception is always shaped by context, not just by raw input. A sound heard in the morning may feel different from the same sound heard in the late afternoon, not because the sound itself has changed, but because the brain's internal state has shifted. Researchers studying cognitive neuroscience often emphasize that perception is deeply state-dependent. This state dependence reflects the continuous dialogue between the body and the brain, where internal conditions subtly shape how the external world is experienced. As the day continues, metabolic regulation also begins to prepare for the approaching transition toward evening. Glucose utilization patterns adjust slightly, and hormonal signals gradually shift in anticipation of reduced activity. Even before conscious awareness of fatigue appears, the body has already begun to reorient itself toward a slower mode of functioning. This anticipatory regulation is one of the most elegant features of biological systems. It allows for smooth transitions rather than abrupt changes, ensuring that energy and attention are gradually redistributed rather than suddenly withdrawn. Scientists often describe this as predictive homeostatic regulation, where the body continuously forecasts its own needs based on patterns of experience and environmental cues. This predictive capacity helps maintain stability across long periods of time, reducing strain on any single system. At the level of the nervous system, synaptic activity continues its constant refinement. Neurons are never truly idle, even during periods of reduced external stimulation. Instead, they remain engaged in low-level signaling, maintaining network readiness while integrating recent patterns of activity. This ongoing background activity supports what researchers sometimes refer to as neural baseline stability. It ensures that the brain remains flexible and responsive without becoming overly excitable or depleted. Over time, this balance contributes to cognitive resilience, allowing the mind to recover more easily from periods of stress or high demand. Even during quiet moments in the late afternoon, the brain is still engaged in subtle calibration, adjusting its internal settings in response to the day's accumulated experiences. Emotional tone during this time of day may also begin to shift in subtle ways. As energy levels fluctuate, emotional responses can become slightly more sensitive or introspective. This is not necessarily a negative change, but rather a reflection of the brain's ongoing integration of internal and external signals. Emotional processing is closely linked to physiological state, meaning that changes in energy, attention, and hormonal balance can all influence how emotions are experienced. Scientists studying affective neuroscience have found that emotional states are not fixed traits, but dynamic patterns that emerge from continuous interaction between multiple systems. As the day progresses, these systems remain active, adjusting emotional responses in real time based on both internal signals and external context. The immune system continues its quiet work during this period as well. Immune cells circulate throughout the body, monitoring for signs of imbalance or disturbance. This surveillance is constant, yet typically remains outside conscious awareness. In addition to its protective role, the immune system also interacts with other biological systems in ways that influence overall physiological balance. Chemical signals released by immune activity can affect energy levels, cognitive function, and even mood. This interconnectedness reflects the broader principle that no single system operates in isolation. Instead, well-being emerges from the continuous coordination of many overlapping networks, each contributing to stability in its own way. As external light begins to shift toward the warmer tones of late afternoon and early evening, the body's circadian system begins to register subtle environmental changes. Light intensity and color temperature provide important signals that help regulate internal timing mechanisms. These signals influence the production of melatonin and other hormones involved in preparing the body for rest. Even before sunset, these processes begin to adjust internal conditions in anticipation of the coming night. This gradual preparation ensures that the transition into evening is smooth and biologically coherent. The body does not wait for complete darkness to begin this shift. Instead, it responds continuously to the changing environment, integrating multiple sensory cues into a unified regulatory response. At the same time, cognitive processes begin to shift their emphasis from external engagement toward internal consolidation. The brain continues to process information gathered throughout the day, organizing it into patterns that support memory and understanding. This ongoing integration does not require conscious effort. Instead, it unfolds naturally as part of the brain's continuous activity. Researchers studying memory formation have found that even during wakefulness, the brain engages in cycles of encoding and consolidation. New experiences are not simply stored in a static form, but are continuously reshaped and integrated into existing knowledge structures. This dynamic process allows for flexibility in learning while maintaining coherence in long-term memory. As the day moves closer to evening, there is often a subtle shift in the overall tempo of both mind and body. Activity becomes less externally driven and more internally reflective. This does not mean that function decreases, but rather that its orientation changes. Attention may become less scattered and more focused on smaller sets of stimuli. Thoughts may slow slightly, allowing for deeper processing of ongoing experiences. This shift is part of the body's natural rhythm, reflecting the gradual transition from outward engagement to inward preparation. It is one of the many ways in which biological systems maintain balance across changing conditions. And so, as the late hours of the day begin to approach, all of these systems continue their quiet coordination. Neural networks adjust, metabolic pathways recalibrate, hormonal signals shift, and sensory processing adapts to the changing environment. Nothing operates in isolation, and nothing ceases abruptly. Instead, everything moves in relation to everything else, forming a continuous flow of regulation and adaptation. Within this flow, well-being remains present not as a fixed state, but as the ongoing result of countless interactions unfolding across time. Even as the day begins to slow, the body remains fully engaged in its subtle work of maintaining balance, preparing for rest while still supporting awareness. And beneath every moment of experience, this quiet coordination continues, carrying forward the same underlying rhythm that has been present since the first moments of waking, now gently guiding the system toward the approaching night once again. As evening begins to settle more fully, the body enters a phase where external activity naturally decreases and internal regulation becomes more prominent again. This transition is not a reversal of the daytime state, but a continuation of the same biological rhythm that has been unfolding all along. The difference lies in emphasis. During the day, systems prioritize interaction with the external environment. In the evening, they gradually shift toward preparation for rest and recovery. This shift is guided by the circadian system, which continuously integrates information about light, temperature, and behavioral patterns. As light levels soften, the brain receives signals that subtly influence hormone production, particularly melatonin, which plays a key role in signaling that the biological night is approaching. This does not instantly induce sleepiness, but it gently adjusts the internal conditions that make rest more likely as time progresses. At the same time, metabolic activity begins to transition toward a more balanced and conserving mode. Energy expenditure often decreases slightly as physical activity naturally slows in the evening hours. The body becomes more efficient in distributing resources, preparing for the extended period of reduced external input that will come with sleep. Blood glucose regulation remains active, ensuring that energy supply stays stable even as dietary intake typically decreases later in the day. This steady regulation reflects the body's ongoing commitment to maintaining internal balance under changing external conditions. Scientists studying metabolic rhythms often note that timing is just as important as quantity when it comes to energy use. The same processes that support alertness during the day are gradually adjusted to support restoration at night, demonstrating the fluid adaptability of biological systems. In the nervous system, a similar rebalancing begins to take place. The brain's attentional networks, which were highly engaged throughout the day, slowly reduce their external focus. Sensory filtering becomes more selective, allowing the system to conserve processing resources while still remaining responsive to important stimuli. This is not a shutdown, but a recalibration. The brain remains fully active, but its priorities shift inward. Internal processing, memory integration, and emotional evaluation become more prominent. Researchers studying evening cognitive patterns have observed that this period often supports reflective thinking, where experiences from earlier in the day are gently reviewed and organized. This reflective state is not necessarily conscious or structured, but it contributes to the brain's ongoing effort to integrate information across time. Emotionally, the evening can bring a subtle change in tone as well. As external demands lessen, internal signals may become more noticeable. This does not imply any particular emotional direction, but rather a shift in awareness toward internal states that may have been less prominent during busier parts of the day. Emotional regulation systems continue their balancing work, integrating physiological signals with cognitive interpretation. The brain's limbic structures, including those involved in emotional processing, maintain active communication with higher cortical regions that help contextualize and regulate responses. This ongoing interaction ensures that emotional experiences remain integrated rather than fragmented. Well-being during this time is closely tied to the smooth coordination of these systems, allowing emotional states to flow without becoming overwhelming or disconnected. As evening deepens, environmental cues continue to play an important role in guiding internal rhythms. Diminishing light intensity is one of the strongest signals for the circadian system. Specialized photoreceptors in the eyes detect not only brightness, but also changes in light wavelength, particularly the reduction of blue light that is more prevalent during daylight hours. These signals are transmitted to central regulatory regions in the brain, which adjust hormonal output and neural activity accordingly. Over time, this alignment between external environment and internal biology reinforces the stability of sleep-wake cycles. It is a continuous feedback loop that has been refined over millions of years of evolution, allowing organisms to anticipate and adapt to daily changes in their environment. During this period, the body also begins to prepare more directly for the upcoming phase of sleep. Core temperature starts to gradually decline, reflecting a natural rhythm that supports the onset of rest. This cooling process is carefully regulated and contributes to the transition from wakefulness to sleep. At the same time, levels of alertness promoting hormones decrease, while those associated with relaxation and rest begin to rise. These shifts are gradual and overlapping, ensuring that the transition into sleep is smooth rather than abrupt. Scientists studying sleep onset often emphasize that this process is not a simple switch, but a progressive reorganization of multiple systems working in harmony. Meanwhile, cognitive activity continues its quiet integration. The brain does not stop processing information in the evening. Instead, it shifts toward consolidation and organization. Experiences from earlier in the day are gradually woven into existing memory networks. This process helps reduce cognitive load and supports long-term retention. It also contributes to the sense of mental closure that often accompanies the end of a day. Even without conscious effort, the brain is continuously working to organize and refine information, ensuring that important patterns are preserved while less relevant details fade over time. This selective refinement is essential for maintaining cognitive efficiency and clarity. As external activity slows further, the nervous system begins to show increased signs of parasympathetic dominance. This branch of the autonomic system supports rest, digestion, and recovery. Heart rate may become slightly slower and more regular. Breathing patterns may become deeper and more rhythmic. These changes are subtle but important, as they help create the internal conditions necessary for restorative processes. Importantly, this does not mean the system becomes inactive. Rather, it shifts its focus from external engagement to internal maintenance. This balance between activation and rest is a defining feature of healthy biological function. Across all these systems, there remains a consistent theme of coordination. Nothing in the body operates independently. Every adjustment in one system influences others through continuous feedback loops. Hormonal changes affect neural activity. Neural signals influence metabolic processes. Metabolic states influence immune function. This interconnectedness ensures that well-being emerges from the collective behavior of the entire organism rather than from any single component. It is this integration that allows the body to adapt smoothly to changing conditions throughout the day and night. And so, as evening gradually deepens and the world outside becomes quieter, the body continues its steady transition toward rest. Each system follows its own rhythm, yet remains in harmony with the others. The shift from activity to rest is not a break in continuity, but another expression of the same ongoing biological rhythm that has been present from the beginning of the day. Beneath awareness, processes of regulation, adaptation, and preparation continue without interruption, gently guiding the organism toward the next cycle of restoration that awaits in the night ahead. As the night becomes more established, the body moves into its most restorative phase, where external demands fade almost completely and internal processes take full priority. This is not a sudden change, but the culmination of a long, gradual descent from daytime activity into deeper biological rest. In this phase, the circadian system is fully engaged in supporting sleep architecture, guiding the brain and body through structured cycles that repeat across the night. These cycles are not random. They are carefully organized sequences that balance deep restoration with lighter transitional states. Scientists often describe this as a rhythmic alternation between different sleep stages, each contributing in its own way to overall recovery. Deep sleep supports physical restoration and cellular repair, while lighter stages and REM sleep contribute to memory integration and neural organization. Together, they form a complete system of nighttime maintenance that supports both body and mind. During deep sleep, brain activity becomes highly synchronized. Large populations of neurons begin to fire in slow, coordinated waves that reflect reduced external processing and increased internal regulation. These slow oscillations are thought to play an important role in allowing the brain to reset and reorganize its activity patterns. At the same time, the body enters a state of enhanced repair. Growth-related processes become more active, supporting tissue maintenance and cellular regeneration. Protein synthesis increases, allowing damaged structures to be repaired and replaced. Even at the microscopic level, the body is engaged in constant renewal. These processes are not visible from the outside, yet they are essential for maintaining long-term stability and resilience. Without them, the effects of daily wear and tear would gradually accumulate. Instead, the body uses this quiet period of rest to restore balance and prepare for the demands of the next day. In parallel, the immune system continues its subtle and highly coordinated activity. Immune responses are often enhanced during sleep, allowing the body to reinforce its defenses and maintain internal stability. Certain immune cells become more active, while signaling molecules help regulate inflammatory balance. This does not mean that the immune system is only active at night, but rather that its activity follows rhythms that are closely aligned with sleep cycles. Researchers have found that sleep disruption can affect immune function, highlighting the importance of this nightly coordination. During healthy sleep, immune processes operate in harmony with other systems, contributing to overall well-being without disrupting rest. This quiet vigilance is one of the many examples of how the body maintains continuous protection even during its most restful states. As the night progresses, the brain enters cycles of REM sleep, where neural activity becomes more variable and resembles patterns seen during wakefulness, though in a distinctly different context. REM sleep is often associated with vivid dreaming, but its biological function extends beyond subjective experience. During this stage, the brain continues to process and integrate information, particularly emotional and experiential memories. Neural connections are reorganized, and certain patterns of activity are reinforced while others are modified or weakened. This dynamic restructuring supports learning and emotional regulation. Scientists believe that REM sleep plays a key role in helping the brain adapt to new experiences while maintaining psychological balance. It allows for the integration of complex information in a way that supports flexibility and resilience in waking life. At the same time, the body's autonomic regulation continues its carefully balanced activity. Even in deep sleep, systems such as heart rate, breathing, and blood pressure are not static. They fluctuate in subtle rhythms that reflect both internal states and neural control. These fluctuations are part of a healthy regulatory system that maintains responsiveness while supporting rest. The cardiovascular system, for example, continues to adjust blood flow based on metabolic needs, ensuring that tissues receive adequate oxygen and nutrients even during periods of reduced activity. These adjustments occur without conscious awareness, guided by a network of feedback mechanisms that operate continuously throughout the night. Metabolic processes also remain active during sleep, though their priorities shift toward maintenance and efficiency. Energy consumption is carefully regulated to support essential functions while conserving resources where possible. The liver continues to manage glucose levels, ensuring that the brain and other organs have a stable energy supply. Fat metabolism may increase during certain stages of sleep, reflecting the body's flexible use of energy sources. These metabolic adjustments demonstrate the body's ability to maintain balance even in the absence of external input. Well-being, in this context, depends on the smooth coordination of energy systems that operate continuously across different states of activity and rest. As these systems continue their work, the brain's large-scale networks remain engaged in processes of integration and recalibration. The default mode network, sensory systems, and memory-related structures interact in complex ways that support the ongoing organization of information. Although consciousness is reduced during deep sleep, neural activity continues to reflect structured patterns rather than random noise. This organization is essential for maintaining cognitive stability over time. It ensures that experiences are not only stored but also meaningfully integrated into existing knowledge frameworks. Over the course of the night, this integration contributes to a more coherent and adaptive mental state upon waking. Throughout all these processes, temperature regulation continues to play a quiet but essential role. The slight reduction in core body temperature during sleep supports deeper rest and helps stabilize internal rhythms. This cooling process is carefully controlled and varies across different stages of sleep. It reflects the body's ability to fine-tune its internal environment in response to changing functional demands. Even small variations in temperature can influence sleep quality, demonstrating the sensitivity of biological systems to internal balance. This regulation is another example of how well-being is maintained through continuous adjustment rather than fixed conditions. As the night reaches its later stages, the body begins to prepare once again for the eventual return of wakefulness. Hormonal cycles subtly shift in anticipation of morning, and neural activity gradually becomes more responsive to external stimuli. These changes occur slowly and seamlessly, ensuring that the transition from sleep to wakefulness will be smooth and stable when the time comes. Even before awareness returns, the body is already beginning this preparation, guided by internal clocks that have been synchronized through countless cycles of day and night. And so, throughout the depth of the night, all systems remain engaged in their quiet, coordinated activity. Cells repair, networks reorganize, energy is balanced, and information is integrated. Nothing is idle, yet nothing is forced. Everything moves according to rhythm, timing, and interconnection. In this state, well-being is not something separate from biology, but the natural expression of it. It emerges continuously from the harmonious functioning of countless processes working together in subtle and precise coordination. As the night continues toward its final stages, this quiet orchestration persists, carrying the body gently forward through cycles of restoration that prepare it for the gradual return of morning light, when the same systems will once again shift their focus toward awareness, engagement, and the unfolding rhythm of a new day. As the final portion of the night continues, the body remains in a deeply coordinated state of restoration, but subtle transitions begin to emerge that signal the gradual approach of a new cycle. These changes are not abrupt or dramatic. Instead, they are woven into the ongoing rhythm of sleep, shaped by internal clocks that have been running with remarkable consistency throughout the entire night. The circadian system, still active beneath the surface of rest, begins to gently shift its signals in preparation for the return of wakefulness. Hormonal patterns adjust in quiet anticipation, with slight increases in alertness-related signals occurring even before any conscious awareness begins to return. This early preparation ensures that the transition into morning is smooth, stable, and biologically coherent, rather than sudden or disorienting. Within the brain, large-scale networks continue their cyclical patterns of activity, but their balance slowly changes as sleep progresses toward its final stages. Deep restorative phases become less dominant, while lighter sleep stages become more frequent. This transition reflects the brain's gradual movement from intensive physical and cellular restoration toward cognitive reactivation. Neural circuits that were highly synchronized during deep sleep begin to show more variability, a sign that the brain is preparing to re-engage with external information. At the same time, memory-related systems remain active, continuing the subtle process of integration that has been unfolding throughout the night. Experiences from the previous day are not simply stored away but reorganized into existing mental frameworks, allowing for improved coherence and accessibility upon waking. This ongoing restructuring is one of the reasons why sleep is so closely associated with learning, clarity, and emotional balance. The body's metabolic systems also begin to subtly shift their orientation. Energy usage remains stable, but internal regulation starts to favor readiness rather than deep conservation. Glucose availability is carefully maintained, ensuring that the brain will have immediate access to energy when wakefulness begins. Liver activity adjusts in anticipation of increased demand, while hormonal signals gradually prepare the body for activity. These processes are not triggered by a single event, but are the result of continuous monitoring of internal states and external cues. Even in the absence of conscious awareness, the body is constantly predicting future needs based on rhythmic patterns that have repeated over countless cycles. This predictive regulation is one of the most sophisticated aspects of biological function, allowing for seamless transitions between states without disruption. As the night moves closer to its end, the autonomic nervous system begins a gentle shift in balance. The parasympathetic dominance that supported deep rest gradually gives way to a more balanced interaction with sympathetic activity. This does not mean that alertness suddenly returns, but rather that the system begins to re-establish readiness for external engagement. Heart rate may become slightly more variable, breathing patterns may shift subtly, and overall physiological responsiveness begins to increase. These changes are carefully modulated to avoid abrupt transitions, ensuring that the body remains stable while preparing for the demands of waking life. Researchers studying sleep physiology often emphasize that this transition is one of the most precisely regulated phases of the entire daily cycle, reflecting the importance of smooth re-entry into conscious awareness. At the same time, sensory processing systems begin to increase their sensitivity. The brain remains partially shielded from external input during sleep, but this protective filtering gradually loosens as the end of the sleep cycle approaches. Sounds, light, and physical sensations become more likely to be registered even if they do not immediately trigger full awakening. This gradual increase in sensory responsiveness is part of the body's natural mechanism for transitioning between states. It allows for a gentle reorientation toward the environment, ensuring that wakefulness emerges in a stable and integrated way. Rather than a sudden shift from unconsciousness to awareness, the process unfolds in stages, each layer of processing becoming slightly more active as the cycle completes. Emotionally, this late stage of sleep can also carry subtle influences from earlier processing. The brain's integration of emotional experiences continues even in these final cycles, refining the way memories and feelings are organized. Emotional regulation systems remain active, helping to stabilize internal states as the body prepares for waking life. This contributes to the sense of emotional continuity that often accompanies healthy sleep. Experiences from the previous day are not erased or isolated but woven into a broader narrative that supports psychological balance. Scientists studying affective neuroscience suggest that this ongoing integration helps reduce emotional fragmentation, allowing for a more coherent and stable experience of mood upon waking. As light levels in the environment begin to shift with the approach of morning, even if not yet consciously perceived, the circadian system registers these changes and begins reinforcing its preparatory signals. Specialized light-sensitive cells continue to influence the brain's internal timing centers, ensuring that biological rhythms remain aligned with external day-night cycles. This alignment is essential for maintaining long-term stability in sleep-wake patterns. It allows the body to anticipate environmental changes with remarkable accuracy, reducing the need for abrupt physiological adjustments. Over time, this synchronization between internal and external rhythms becomes a foundational element of well-being, supporting consistent energy levels, cognitive function, and emotional regulation. Throughout this final stage of sleep, the body remains in a state of quiet coordination. No system operates in isolation, and no process occurs independently. Neural activity, hormonal signaling, metabolic regulation, immune function, and autonomic balance all continue to interact in subtle and continuous ways. Even as sleep begins to lighten, this integration remains intact, ensuring that the transition toward wakefulness preserves the stability achieved during the night. The body does not simply switch states, it evolves through them, maintaining continuity at every step. And so, as the final moments of rest unfold, there is a gradual sense of emergence taking shape beneath the surface of awareness. Systems that supported deep restoration now begin to support readiness. Processes that maintained internal balance now prepare for external engagement. Yet throughout this entire transition, the underlying rhythm remains unchanged. It is the same continuous biological orchestration that has been present since the beginning of sleep, now gently guiding the system toward the threshold of a new day. In this quiet space between rest and wakefulness, well-being is not something that appears suddenly, but something that has been continuously maintained. Every adjustment, every cycle, every subtle interaction has contributed to this moment of transition. And as the body moves closer to full awareness once again, it carries forward the quiet stability of the night, ready to unfold into the next phase of experience with the same underlying balance that has sustained it throughout the entire journey. As wakefulness finally begins to return in a more complete form, the transition that has been unfolding across many overlapping biological systems becomes more noticeable in its coordination. Yet even here, there is no sharp boundary between sleep and waking life. Instead, consciousness rises gradually, like a slow increase in light rather than a sudden switch. Neural networks that were previously operating in deeply synchronized sleep patterns begin to reorganize into more flexible and externally responsive configurations. This reorganization allows the brain to shift from internal maintenance toward perception, decision-making, and interaction with the environment. However, traces of the night's activity remain present in the background, subtly influencing the tone of thought and perception. Memory integration, emotional processing, and neural recalibration do not stop abruptly at waking. They continue to shape the early moments of awareness in quiet and often unnoticed ways. In these early stages, sensory experience becomes more defined as the brain increases its interpretive resolution. Light entering the eyes is processed with greater clarity. Sound patterns are separated into more distinct elements, and bodily sensations become more consciously accessible. Yet perception is still in a transitional state, influenced by the lingering effects of sleep-related neural activity. This can create a sense of gradual sharpening, where the world slowly comes into focus rather than appearing all at once. Scientists studying wakefulness describe this as a progressive increase in cortical arousal, where different regions of the brain become active in a coordinated sequence rather than simultaneously. This sequence ensures that cognitive and sensory systems are brought online in a stable and organized manner, reducing the likelihood of disorientation during the transition. At the same time, the body continues its physiological adjustments to full daytime function. Core temperature rises slightly, supporting increased metabolic activity and alertness. Cardiovascular systems stabilize into patterns suitable for wakeful activity, with heart rate adjusting to posture, movement, and environmental demands. Blood flow distribution shifts to prioritize muscles, brain regions involved in attention, and organs responsible for digestion and energy regulation. These adjustments are guided by autonomic control systems that continuously monitor internal conditions and respond accordingly. Even though these changes occur without conscious effort, they are highly responsive to both internal and external cues, reflecting the body's ability to integrate multiple sources of information into a unified regulatory response. Metabolism also becomes more actively engaged during this transition. After a period of nighttime maintenance, Energy systems begin to prepare for increased demand. Glucose availability is regulated to ensure that the brain has immediate access to fuel for cognitive activity. Hormonal signals such as cortisol follow their natural early morning rise, contributing to alertness and readiness. This hormonal rhythm is not random but part of a deeply embedded circadian pattern that has evolved to align internal physiology with environmental cycles of light and activity. As these signals increase, they help guide the organism into a state of readiness for the day ahead, without requiring conscious intervention. Within the brain, attentional networks gradually take on a more dominant role. Systems responsible for selective focus begin to strengthen their coordination, allowing the mind to prioritize relevant information and filter out distractions. This process is essential for effective engagement with the environment. Working memory becomes more stable, enabling the temporary holding and manipulation of information needed for planning and decision-making. Executive control systems begin to coordinate more effectively with sensory and emotional networks, supporting coherent thought and adaptive behavior. Yet even as these systems become more active, they remain influenced by the restorative processes of the night. Sleep has not only repaired physical and neural systems, but also shaped the way in which these systems re-engage with the world. Emotionally, the early morning state often reflects a subtle integration of previous experiences. Emotional memories processed during sleep contribute to a baseline tone that influences mood and perception upon waking. This does not mean that emotions are predetermined, but rather that they emerge from a background of ongoing neural integration. The brain's emotional regulation systems continue to adjust internal states, ensuring that emotional responses remain balanced and appropriate to current conditions. This ongoing adjustment reflects the dynamic nature of emotional well-being, which is not fixed but continuously shaped by both internal physiology and external context. As environmental light becomes more prominent, the circadian system receives increasingly strong signals that daytime has begun. Specialized retinal cells detect changes in light intensity and wavelength, transmitting this information to the brain's central timing centers. These signals reinforce the alignment between internal biological rhythms and external environmental cycles. Over time, this alignment helps stabilize sleep-wake patterns, ensuring that physiological processes occur at appropriate times of day. This synchronization is one of the most fundamental aspects of biological well-being, influencing everything from hormone regulation to cognitive performance. Meanwhile, the digestive system begins to anticipate the possibility of food intake. Even before eating occurs, hormonal and neural signals prepare the gastrointestinal tract for activity. Enzymes may become more active, and blood flow to digestive organs may increase slightly. This anticipatory regulation ensures that the body is ready to efficiently process nutrients when they become available. It reflects the broader principle that biological systems are predictive rather than purely reactive. They do not simply respond to events after they occur, but instead prepare for likely future conditions based on rhythmic patterns and learnt experience. As these processes continue to unfold, there is a gradual sense of stabilization across all systems. The transition from sleep to wakefulness becomes complete not through a single moment, but through the convergence of many small adjustments. Neural, metabolic, hormonal, and sensory systems all align into a coherent state of daytime function. Yet even in this fully awake condition, the body retains the memory of its nighttime restoration. The effects of sleep are not erased upon waking but carried forward into the structure of the day itself. And so, as full awareness settles in and the day begins to take shape, what remains constant is the underlying continuity of biological activity. Every system that supported deep rest now supports conscious engagement. Every rhythm that guided sleep now contributes to waking stability. Nothing has been reset or replaced. Everything has been transformed and carried forward. Beneath the surface of experience, the same quiet coordination continues, maintaining balance across countless interacting systems. Life proceeds not as a series of separate states, but as a continuous flow of adaptation, restoration, and renewal. In this way, even the moment of waking becomes part of a larger, uninterrupted process. The body and brain do not move from one state to another in isolation. Instead, They flow through a carefully regulated continuum in which every phase supports the next. And as the day begins anew, this subtle orchestration remains present, quietly sustaining the conditions that allow awareness, thought, and experience to unfold once again.